The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Minnesota Soccer Podcast. We are back once again. Just like Minnesota United, I am on the road in Iowa, even though that will soon be my home, but details. Just like Alliance Field will soon be Minnesota United's new home. Transitions, good stuff. I'm on with Nick Hallett and Tom Schreier, as usual, back in the Twin Cities. Boys, how was your weekend?
Mine was good. I was coming back on 94 from Cabin Country. Did see Allianz Field. It is that's how it's relevant, Nick.
Okay,
Nick just scoffed at me. Just scoffed at me. It was terrible, Naylor. I had to deal with all this. Yeah.
It's like, where's this story?
Came back on 94. It's looking good. It's starting. I haven't seen inside, but from the outside, it's starting to look ready, and it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I keep hoping they're going to give us another chance to get in there and take some pictures. We haven't had a media tour since I think the beginning of May. And so I'm hoping that, if they hit a break point in construction in late August, early September, that we'll be able to get somebody in there and get a view of what's going on. Because I suspect it's starting to really look like a stadium, because I know it is from outside. I've also gotten the chance to drive by there on the way to a work event at Como Zoo. And it looks like a stadium now. Really, really does. So, Nick Hallett, late as usual.
Yeah, but I did find the hottest, the trendiest new sushi bowl spot that everyone's got to check out.
Okay, so I was going to ask you this off air, but I forgot, so we're rolling with it. How do you just put all the ingredients of sushi in a bowl and just eat it? Is that what a sushi bowl is?
You've never had a sushi bowl, dude?
No, I've never had a sushi bowl.
Oh, bro, sushi bowls, they're so good. You ever have sushi and you're like, this is really good, but I'm American, so I need a lot more meat involved and a lot more food in general. Well, let me welcome you to the sushi bowl.
This sounds right up my alley.
Because it's a lot more of everything, and it's mixed a little differently. And it's this particular place had I have some sushi crab in here. I have some pork belly. I have this awesome sushi sauce that just went all over it. Some rice. This place does rice and spinach. So instead of just getting your rice with your sushi, I got spinach and rice. Dude, tons of good stuff going on here. So
all right, I'm interested. I'm into it.
Yeah, you gotta holler.
Yep.
I will tell you guys that I did get a parking ticket for being in there for 7 minutes. And I got a parking ticket,
and that's why I don't go places in Dinkytown ever,
dude. Freaking hawks on that stuff. Yeah, never plug your meters when you're in Dinkytown. Words to live.
He was parked the opposite direction. That was the tell.
Anyway, it was probably a cheaper parking ticket than you would have gotten if you tried to park illegally to go to the game in Los Angeles last night, right?
Right. Transitions.
Minnesota United played at the StubHub Center in Carson, California. Not really Los Angeles, but And they actually didn't lose. They did it. They made it happen. 2-2 draw against LA Galaxy, who are above them in the standings, in playoff position as it stands right now. Zlatan Ibrahimovic did not score a goal against them. And it was the way I phrased it in my recap, which you can find on zonecoverage.com, was it was a game of a roller coaster, because it went down, then up, then down, then up, then down, then every kind of which way with the progress of the game. And it was I don't know what I expected going into this. I don't think I expected it to be the same, but it felt the same to start off with. Nick, what were your initial impressions of this game?
Well, it's funny because I think you kind of said it when you said they didn't lose. And a lot of times the temperature of this game for me was oh, here we go, Minnesota United on the road. How are they going to drop all 3 points? Because that's what they do, or have done this season. So that's what I felt. And again, a trademark of them when they lose on the road is that they look lethargic. They don't look particularly dynamic going forward. Look susceptible defensively. And
tend to give up early goals.
Yes, and then fail to boss possession almost at any point. And so all those things are happening, right? You checked all those boxes, and you're like, all right, yep, this is just going to... There was a good chunk right in the middle of the game. I feel like a lot of people, again, would have felt the same way. Would have been like, all right, we're just waiting for LA to get their second and their third goal, and then we can just kind of tune out. It's going to be 3-0. That's what it felt like.
I'm pretty sure I said that, like, at about the 40th minute of the game. Like, can I go to bed yet? It's 10:30 here in Central Time. Like,
right? Exactly. Exactly.
The funny thing is, I was not watching because, again, I was in cabin country on the woods. And seriously, no, but I was getting updates on my phone. And even just knowing what I know from producing the show, listening, reading you guys' stuff, I was like, oh, God, this is over. And I think is this progress?
I think so. I think... We're pointing out, right, previous trends, and now they've kind of
previous trends that happened in this game that they managed to beat.
Right, that they bucked, within one game. So is it a small sample size? Absolutely, but is it potentially progress? Yes. I would, and it's a larger point, but I'm a bit cautious because I think the reason they saved this game is Heath made the substitutions that he needed to make, and I just worry that he is a bit of a part of the problem at times because, and I've said this before, but he's just a little too slow on when his team needs a kick in the butt or when his team needs a tactical shakeup. He's just a little hesitant to do it, and tries to hold his cards as long as he can, when really he should be shuffling and changing things up a little quicker. And he, eventually does make the change, and that the substitutes combine to score the tying goal and earn a point on the road, which is so huge for this team. But that's my concern, is that he's not making changes as swiftly as he should.
Well, and we've seen it before that this team has allowed goals, and then immediately after the goal, the substitution comes. And that was the case in this game. LA's second goal came in the 73rd minute. Within 2 minutes, Eric Miller, who had gotten beaten by Sebastian Lletget to start off the goal-scoring opportunity, was off for Romario Ibarra, a change that I wanted to see for offensive reasons,
right?
Let alone for Miller getting beat. And it just feels like you could have done that in the 70th. You could have done that in the 65th. Like, LA's made 2 of 3 changes by halftime.
Yeah. It's tough because, right, we're all armchair managers in this situation. And he's on the road. Adrian and his team are on the road. They struggle mightily to get points on the road. They're 1-1 with LA thanks to a great play from Darwin and a first-ever MLS goal for Boxall. But it's hard to shame him for trying to hold on to the draw in that situation and potentially earn the point that way. But as we've highlighted and seen in previous games, Seattle Sounders game, that holding on to things is not maybe the best strategy in general, and particularly when you have a team that is susceptible to allow a goal at any moment. So to try to lean into that, lean into defense, lean into holding onto anything, is maybe not your best strategy, and be a bit more cavalier, be a bit more bold, and go forward. And so I know I feel very armchair because I think you put Naylor in a suit and tie and he's got Minnesota United 1-1 on the road against LA. I don't know. I feel like Naylor might, clam up, and I might be, the same way. Like, you know what I mean? It's hard when you're actually the one making that decision. From the armchair, you're like, dude, unleash the dogs. Like, get Romario out there, get Abu out there. Let's go, let's play. And so, you know what I mean, David? Like, it's just... I
know exactly, yeah. Like, it was that same kind of thing where it's like, if you look at the flow of this game between minute 65 when Minnesota scores their first goal and minute 75 when LA scores their second, United had one of their better spells of the game for the 5 minutes after they scored and evened up the game. It's one of those things where, like, from our armchair position, we could be like, well, the guys that are on the field are figuring it out and they're doing a good job, so why would I change anything? You can also look at it like, we've got a goal. LA's looking vulnerable. Let's put on some more potent attacking pieces, punish some tired legs with Romario Ibarra and Abu Danlai's speed, and really put the hammer down on them, which, as you pointed it out, Nick, doing that on the road is a bold move and not something that this team has done or even been in a position to do this year. And it doesn't shock me that Adrian Heath didn't do it, but at the same time, it's just like, if you think about it just on the bare minimum reasoning of having fresh legs, there might be an argument for making that move earlier than the 75th minute.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky. Again, from my armchair, like I said, I'm like, change the formation, put a Romario on, put Abu on, move Quintero back into the number 10, like, do all those things. And it's really easy from the armchair. And again, a good part of me thinks that those are the right answers. Those are things that he should be doing. It's tough, though, when you look at the other factors. Like, on some level, Heath is also managing not just to try to get this team into the postseason, but potentially to keep his job. Like, he's managing, and so if he were to kind of throw caution to the wind a bit and start, playing more aggressive formations or doing aggressive substituting and it backfiring, that could cost him his job. So that's a tough place to put him in, and that's why it's so right. All those great franchises like the Patriots, et cetera, function so well because Bill Belichick knows that he can make the call, whatever call he wants to make, and it's not going to overall affect. Yeah, exactly. He has the equity
the contract.
In the contract, and it's not going to necessarily affect his livelihood or his job. And when you have managers under the cosh like soccer, a lot of soccer leagues do, then you get. That's a factor. And so I think that might be part of the reason Heath doesn't, because Heath strikes me as a bold guy. He certainly is in the way he speaks,
in
the way he speaks to the media, and just the way he is in general. So that's what's surprising to me is that he's not more bold when it comes to his decision-making. So,
yep, I'm with that. I like the point about Heath's stability as a potential reason for him staying a little bit more cautious. We've speculated a lot, which kind of is our job as podcasters. We get to be in the armchair and have these conversations and present our points of view without the pressure of losing our full-time employment, etc.
Yes.
We can speak in hypotheticals.
Yes.
Nick Hallett, what was the most positive thing you saw in this game?
Well, I'd love to hit that. I want to just one
hit
other
that in a bit, yeah.
Yeah, one other piece on that whole situation is it's really interesting if you look at it from a standings position, right? Minnesota United attempting to make the postseason. They're within reach. It's plausible. How fun would that be? How much brand equity would that have for the franchise? How much momentum could that have going into next year if they make postseason this year and then open a new state? All those things, right? And you play in a league in Major League Soccer that doesn't have relegation. So when you look at it from that lens, it's like, dude, why not go for these victories and be aggressive and try to make the postseason? Because if you get shelled by LA and then you get shelled the next game and the next game and the next game, you're not getting relegated. Like, you're safe. So all the more reason, like, you can go for it. That's why when you watch the Premier League, like, a team is like clawing and dying just to get a draw because they needed to stay in their league.
Yeah.
That's not the case here.
I think the interesting thing here, though, just again as a casual observer, if they get blown out first game on the road, and they're not back here until September 22nd? Is that right?
Yep.
In some ways, you don't want the players to check out for sure, primarily, but you also don't want fans to check out and be like, "Yeah, I'm glad I shut that game off at 10:30 or whatever." And I don't think they're gonna. I think the season's over, and I know fans overreact. I'm kind of getting in the head of someone who's fanatical, right? And I do. So maybe he has. I understand the relegation point, but maybe he has something to. There's something to just getting a tie. There's no moral victories, but a tie just to establish it's not over yet.
Yeah, I would say that's a very valid point. I would say, though, like Naylor and I are discussing, like at 1-1 against the Galaxy looking vulnerable, having, you bringing on Romario and Abu is not necessarily completely leaving your team open to just get scored on necessarily.
For sure.
And again, from a larger point, a more zoomed out point, maybe this is how, seeing what they've done and the formation change he made and seeing what Abu and Romario can bring, I bring it up because also how could this affect the shape of the team going forward from the start, right? The next game, maybe you're starting Abu or you're starting Romario or you're doing the formation that you played at the end against LA or just going to those things quicker next time, right? Now he went to that 75th minute or whatever it was, 77th the other night. Maybe now, okay, this is what I get from those two. I can go to it in the 61st minute next game or what have you. So,
Okay. Nick Hallett, most positive thing you took from this game?
Given, especially under the umbrella of the Christian Ramirez trade, which was obviously a huge midweek news piece and was a bit hanging over this game, was that, again, you kind of feel like Heath and co, right, and Manny Lagos have done fairly well because they had, a good starting lineup, played LA decently well, and Angelo looked really good again, I thought. And then you have the two impact subs that you want in Romario and Abu. And you could see, I didn't see any place in this game for Christian, is one takeaway. That it didn't feel like you were missing number 21 really at all, frankly, which is a good thing because they got a lot of value for him. And then now it's like, look what Abu can do, and now he's more free in his role to be a part of the team, to do other things, to play more, and that's a positive. I think roster construction gets a decent plus coming out of this. How about for you?
Minnesota United scored a goal from open play that did not touch the feet of Darwin Quintero.
That is a great stat.
And that is a rare occasion this season. And not only did it not touch the feet of Darwin Quintero, but as Nick talked about earlier, it was created by Adrian Heath's two substitutes in Romario Ibarra with the finish and Abu Danladi with the perfect cross after the great through ball and run from Ibson. That's the kind of thing that this team needs more of, whether it's on Romario or Abu or on players like an Ibson, like on Angelo, to take the load off of Darwin somewhat. Just because in this game, Darwin did not look like the world beater he's looked like. He was missing passes and dribbles that he normally gets. And considering he had one of the hottest months of July ever in the MLS, it stands to reason that there was going to be some kind of a cool down there. But the fact that in this situation, under pressure, Adrian Heath's substitutes came into this game and got the job done to get the tying goal without being completely reliant on Darwin is huge for this team going forward.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. Here's a question that I'm left, and I'd be interested in your take. So all last season, Adrian was as stubborn as Tom's grandmother when it comes to, I don't know.
Yeah,
she's a nice lady.
Thank you, Mr. Naylor. Thank you, Mr. Naylor.
I was walking down that joke tunnel, and I was like, well, I don't want to insult Tom's grandma, so kind of hit a dead end.
So yeah, he's been stubborn. Let's stop there. I'm kidding. That's not even like insulting my grandmother. I was just like, what? Where is this coming from?
Okay,
Nick, make your point.
He's been stubborn and stuck with the 4-5-1 all last season. Finally, this year we see him being, flexible, and early it was switching and trying a 4-3-3 at times. Later in games, putting Darwin out wide and what have you. And then obviously there's been the momentous shift to the 3-5-2, which has produced great results and had the team playing really well at times and provided more defensive stability. Seemingly. Now, my question coming out of this game, though, because basically he switched to the 4-3-3 when he brought on Romario and Abu, because Abu essentially kind of seemed to be playing wide right, but had license to maybe join up higher as well. And I just wonder, and then that moves Darwin back a bit into the midfield. I just wonder what his second favorite formation is at this point. And if it's not maybe something if he needs to consider going back to one of those other formations from the start.
And to move to another talking point from the game, you suspect we're going to get a better idea of what the second formation is next week out of necessity, because two of Minnesota United's starters will miss next week's game at FC Dallas through suspension. Colin Warner picked up yellow in this game and is up for his yellow card accumulation suspension, which that happens across a league season. You have that every now and then. And your club captain, Francisco Calvo, picked up the single dumbest red card I've seen in a game at least this calendar year.
Dumb on his part? Is that you take?
Yes,
you're on that
I
side?
think that was idiotic because he's on a yellow, which I think the call that he originally received a yellow for was extremely soft. It was foul on Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Zlatan goes down pretty easily, as he was doing the entire night, so not a surprise. Calvo gets a little bit more mad about it than he should have been, picks up a yellow card. Probably a little bit harsh. The second yellow card that he receives, where there's a foul called, and as LA are in an attacking move, Calvo picks up the ball, looks like kind of like he's going to offer it to the opposing guy and chucks it up into the air. That's a time-wasting yellow card in every referee's book in every game at any point. For him to do that on a yellow card when his team is tied 2-2 on the road, trying to get their first point on the road since March as the team captain, was just mind-numbingly stupid.
I mean, I think that's an interesting take. I think that's a hot, steamy
Would you call it hot?
take. I would call that a steamy
All
take.
right.
I think I've seen players do that bajillion times, throw a ball away in the exact same circumstances and not get a yellow for it.
Interesting.
And not that it's by the letter.
It was provocative. I'll put it that way.
By the letter of the law, yes, he could be given a yellow for it. He was time wasting, but based on watching hundreds and thousands of games, that's happened so many times. It's only if you it's like one of those things where it's like baseball where there's the unwritten rules, and the unwritten rule is if you kick it super far, then you get the yellow. But if you kind of hold it and then throw it eventually, you don't get the yellow. That's generally how that goes, and that's why he did it, because he knew that he could probably get away with that, and that ref, for whatever reason, was not having it. I thought that was I was shocked that he was given a yellow for that. I thought
the call was completely fair.
By the letter of the law, it is, but I can't think of one time I've seen a ref do that in that situation. He didn't hold it for that long, and when he threw it, if you look on the replay, when he threw it, it went to the Galaxy player behind the guy he threw it over. So it just went to his other guy, and he caught it. They had it. They had the ball. I was shocked.
I don't know. I get you, but in my mind, you can't put yourself in that situation.
And that's a fair point. It's why even put yourself in that situation? True. Did you see? I retweeted this. Did you see what happened on Twitter regarding this?
Hit me with it. I might have, but I can't remember where you're going with it.
So 55-1 posted a poll after the game and said, what was more annoying? A, Zlatan diving all night, or B, Calvo getting a stupid yellow card.
Wow.
And Calvo responded on Twitter and mocked them for having put up that poll, and mocked them for having only 5,000 followers. And yeah, so I thought it was hilarious.
I think it's interesting how engaged the players are with social.
It was such a welcome sight because we were worried we lost, a player in Ramirez
who did the sitting duck thing.
Yeah, who would loved being on social media. But it looks like Calvo's going to take that mantle right away.
I will note, now that I've found where we're going with this, that Francisco Calvo has since deleted this tweet.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has. I'm looking at your tweet from last night, and the tweet is gone.
This is what happens when you get the Hallett retweet. It's a little bump. It gets you a little more attention. What do you think?
Hold on.
While Nick's looking this up, Naylor, I mean, what do you think about the players engaging with social?
No, dude, Calvo's tweet exists. I'm looking right at it. 55-1 deleted their poll. That's what happened.
Oh, interesting.
Calvo's tweet still exists.
And I'm looking at Francisco Calvo's timeline, and I have no tweets from yesterday.
Okay, maybe I get to still see it since I retweeted his.
Oh, interesting.
But like when go to my timeline. See if you can see. I'll go to mine.
I've got a screenshot of it. Yep, there we go.
Oh yeah, you can see it.
I've got a screenshot of it. I don't have the tweet.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, now that I'm on my timeline, they both deleted.
Interesting.
Doesn't shock me, especially from to Tom's point, like engaging with fans and media and etc. on social media is not necessarily a bad thing, but my suspicion is that isn't really how the team would want him to deal with that situation. And you suspect that perhaps after a cold shower and an evening's rest, that Calvo may have thought better of that being his engagement.
That's how I want him to engage with Twitter. That was awesome.
It's fair. I have a feeling that's not how the team's social media want him to engage with.
I'm sure they probably don't.
And especially given the fact that Calvo has long disagreed with the media perception of himself, of this team. There was a time earlier this year where Calvo asked for an outlet to be excluded from his scrum.
Yeah, which outlet was that?
I'm pretty sure it was 55-1.
Exactly.
So there's some history there. It just isn't really a great look for that to be his response after he gets himself sent off for a really dumb thing and gets himself suspended for next week's game.
That's probably why he was on Twitter, because he was in the locker room by himself because he got the red card, so he's just chilling. So he jumped on Twitter.
Every player checks Twitter after the game. I can confirm that. I like that. That's a thing. Like, and he actually his big talk last week about the Ramirez Rodriguez thing that we covered pretty extensively on this podcast last week. He said he was on Twitter after the game, just seeing what people were talking about. Like, it's these guys are just as connected to social media as we are. It's just they have a different perspective on it as the people getting talked about than we might.
Is that a good thing? Do you like it that they're engaged, or is that a bad thing that their mind goes to what is the reaction to the game?
What perspective? Like from a fan's perspective?
No, I know the fans love it. Like from the players' perspective, is that a healthy thing?
Would you rather your players be engaged on social with what the reaction to them is, or playing Fortnite?
Fortnite, dude. Why does everyone hate Fortnite? Like, I'm just wondering if they,
from a performance standpoint, is it?
Yeah. Like, should they be focused on how they interpret it internally? I'm not saying you should be completely blind to it. I think you should understand what fans are thinking, especially when you're pushing the brand, and especially for any team. It's important for the Wolves, or the Vikings even, but like for a team that's trying to establish itself in the Twin Cities, the newest team, right? So, having said that, is it a positive thing that their mind goes to Twitter as opposed to maybe how do we process this internally?
I would say, yeah, probably
it's a millennial
not.
Thing.
Yeah.
I would say probably not, though. That's probably not what you want to be doing, because I think your perspective gets jilted and it gets changed, and
think of how Twitter, like, people in the media were shocked that this is a famous cross reference. That people like Derrick Rose, right? That he got a standing ovation when he came to Minnesota and was in uniform. And I was like, yeah, if you just said on Twitter, you'd think everyone hates him. And maybe that could be a justified opinion, but that is not the only opinion out there. And think of how, like, you always get the most radical fans on that. We know that as media because we cover the team objectively, right? We want soccer to succeed here. It's a good thing, I think, to have a successful team in Minnesota, but we cover them objectively. And I'm sure you see things on Twitter that you're like, that's so off base from where I think the fan base is thinking. That's kind of, these are a radical, not everyone on Twitter. There is a loud radical group that maybe voices a minority opinion very loudly. And I don't know if that's good for the players to necessarily be engaging with that.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think what's the upside? What's the, you know what I mean?
I mean, some perspective, I suppose. You get some perspective on, like, I don't know. I mean, it's not a lot upside, but
not for their performance. Not for their performance.
Do you disagree, Naylor?
So.
my thought on this is, if you think about, like, when you're getting done with a day of work, or when you're getting done with, like, playing a game of pickup, what's the first thing that you go do when you're done with the game? Probably pick up your water bottle and check your phone, right? None of these guys are that different from that. Like, it's not the fact that, like, you need to have some, like, life-changing, mind-altering dialogue in the locker room after every win, after every loss. You're going to chill, shower, and check your phone. It's what any human would do. And if these guys are engaging with social on that time, like, rather than, like, reading a book or doing their crossword, shout out to Matt Lamson, who does his crossword after every game. Like, I don't know. I think it's perfectly normal human behavior to be doing it. It's interesting that it's become a talking point of its own because of Calvo, because of Ramirez, because players are slightly more visible than that. But, like, I don't know. I don't think it's abnormal for them to be doing it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, personally.
Fair enough.
So that's where I'm at. I don't know. Like, it's an interesting point, and it just seems like one of those things that is a part of not just MLS, not just Minnesota United, but of professional sports in 2018. Like, you see a lot of athletes that find ways to engage on social. You see some that don't, but, like, you look around your timeline on a given day. I saw Karl Anthony Towns tweeting about golf today because everybody was watching the golf today. You see, what did I see? Evan Turner was tweeting about how much he hates mayonnaise the other night. Like,
say that again? How much mayonnaise?
Mayonnaise. Yep.
Okay.
These guys engage with social in the same way we do. Everybody's got their weird stuff, or they don't do it at all. Like, it's a part of kind of almost being an adult human in 2018 more than an athlete.
I love it. I would love for Calvo to be, calling out people on Twitter after every game. Like that.
Hallett loves
that's
this
my
stuff
dream.
so much.
Like that would be amazing. Like, so I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'm just my thing with Calvo isn't necessarily that I'm against that. It's that pick your time and place.
I think that's really fair. And at the end of the day,
that's my thing. Like, because I don't think it's a great time for it last night or today.
Well, if this is the type of discussion we want to have, let's look at it from, let's analyze what 55-1 did and look at their decision. Is it I'm all for in the media saying whatever you want to say, freedom of speech, all that stuff. Whatever your opinion could be dead wrong, but you have the right to say that and voice it. But to go on, your main objective of 55-1 is to cover Minnesota United, soccer in this state, but mainly Minnesota United. Is it really? What are you getting at by having a fan poll after a game by asking what was more annoying about the game, Zlatan diving or the captain of Minnesota United getting sent off for time wasting? Like, is that really, like, is that highbrow to be posting a poll like that? Is that really the best way to engage your audience? Is that helpful? Is that interesting? I would just venture to say that that's, and especially if you look at it from Calvo's perspective, but I would just venture to say that that's just kind of soft. That's just kind of weak, social mediaing. Like, that's just, like, what are you hoping to accomplish there? And I just don't think you're not getting, I don't know, you're getting a really good discussion out of posting that, personally.
Naylor?
I'm pretty much 100% with that. It's interesting because it would refer back to a take from Calvo himself from last week of, does the dialogue need to be negative? Does the dialogue need to be pitting one thing against another? And it was a point that when he made it, I very much agreed with. I don't think that needs to be how the dialogue around things is shaped. And so, like, the poll in question is not exactly cultivating positive dialogue around the team, or constructive dialogue even, because the team is going to have forms of negative dialogue around it because they've been bad on the road all year and they have problems, and some people might disagree with Adrian Heath's management, player selection, whatever you have. Like, it's not always going to be positive, but creating constructive dialogue. Maybe it's not necessarily the media's job to do that, but I think it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, you could add a poll. What is... it's a little hard to say what prevented them from winning because we almost didn't expect this team to win on the road, and especially how the game went early on. But maybe even like a poll that says what crucial play do you think kept them from maybe completing a comeback?
Yeah.
And include that in there with other plays. I agree with you guys on this as much as you said, Nick. This may be something one guy, you know how fast Twitter happens, right? One guy kind of is being snarky, joking around, throws it out there. But Twitter's a funny thing that is relatively permanent for how quick you can make that decision, right? And yeah, I actually think in some ways he's being a captain in a way that maybe we always think of the positive attributes, being supportive of your teammates, going out and representing the team in the community, whatever. This is part of it too, is kind of maybe being a little gritty. If given how important social media is to the players, maybe your captain should go out there and say,
Yeah.
hey, what's up with this?
And to your point, like that's a much better question, right? That's a much better discussion, more interesting, more specific to the sport. And I think it's so often, right? Again, it's really easy for a journalist to just be, and don't get me wrong, right? I'm a journalist through and through. I have a journalist degree. Like
Yeah.
I've been in the trenches on a lot of different journalism stuff, even outside of sports. Like I am a journalist, but I think there's just as much as journalists are meant to check other people, you need to check yourself too. You need to check other journalists. That's the standard that journalism is about.
We've, as much as you joke, you were right about the Ramirez trade and all that.
Yeah.
On Twitter, we've also checked ourselves on this podcast and been like, we're wrong with this.
Yeah.
And I think the more you can do that, the less tension you're going to have.
And so, so I think it's our duty too. Is instead of always like, okay, what can Calvo do better in this game, or what's he doing off the field? Let's look at and that's why I brought it up. Let's look at what 55-1's doing in this situation. Is that productive?
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
It's not as fun. The Ramirez thing was fun, actually.
Yeah.
Like, it was hilarious.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not saying I don't want 55-1 to do other bold things.
Yeah.
Like, do your thing. But I think as much as we can check Calvo, we can check them. And and again, they deleted it too. So I don't think they were too proud of it either.
It was very much probably in the moment, if I had to guess.
So.
Well, and then we say dumb stuff. Twitter, no, everybody on the computer and sitting on Twitter long enough knows how to take a screenshot real quick, myself included, because you see something like that, you're going to take the screenshot because people have their delete buttons. I may have called out the Cardinals Twitter account for tweeting their player debuting's name wrong in a graphic earlier today. So. Dude, his last name is literally Wisdom, and you spell it wrong in the Photoshop, but not in the tweet. Come on, guys.
Whoops.
Yep.
We all make mistakes. Sometimes we compare other things to Tom's grandma. We all make
Sometimes we call the designated player Robertson.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That threat happened. Nick, did you have any final thoughts on the game on Saturday? Just like random stuff. What's going on in your mind about what we saw?
It is open-ended. I mean, I think Schuller's importance was underlined again. As we talked about last week, I noted that Seattle scored and dominated the second half after he had to come off. I felt that he provided a really stable presence in midfield, and to me, it's just clear that he's got sneaky value because he doesn't do almost nothing of what he does is ever sexy, and so he goes unspoken about, and I think his value is there, and I mean it speaks to also the fact that this team has no midfielders. They have Ibson, Schuller, and then it's they didn't even want even Ethan Finley was Warner came out of nowhere to play. Warner, no one was rating Warner. I mean, Harrison Heath is Adrian Heath's son. Never plays. This team has no center mids. It's so curious in and of itself. But I think again, it just speaks to Schuller's value, and that showed through last night as well. I think as we talked about the formation changing potentially coming in the next game for other reasons, Calvo suspension, etc. Eric Miller was brought into this game specifically to be to shore up the defense. You're right. They went a little more conservative by not playing Alexi, and it was Eric Miller who almost was a huge part of the nearly game-winning goal.
And he was put in an unfortunate situation as that goes in, because you have Ledjet cutting inside and you have Jonathan Dos Santos cutting outside at the same time, and he just gets caught between him and doesn't stop either one.
Right,
it's a hard situation to deal with, but you got to do something.
And you have to take the more dangerous option in that situation. And obviously, the guy cutting towards your goal is going to be the potential more dangerous option. And he lets him go. And actually, and again, just because I'm doing my job, not to pile on Calvo, but Miller totally messes up that situation. But there is a ginormous gap in between Miller and Calvo in that situation. Not only is that gap way too big to begin with, but after Lletget cuts in and it makes it clear he's going towards goal, Calvo is so slow to cover in that situation and make up the ground. It's ridiculous. And the space being there in the first place, and then his tortoise-like speed to cover for it is just as bad. It was mind-boggling, like how bad that defending was, because Lletget just walks it in, and then he's one-on-one.
It looked so easy, and that means something went wrong, very, very wrong.
Yes,
on a number of levels.
Exactly.
That just, it was bad.
Yeah,
it was not good.
Yeah, and I put that hugely on Miller and Calvo. And again, a frustration I've had, or that I've just pointed out, just to be fair, is like Colin Warner's defensive, agility is weak, and he's the defensive mid in this team right now. And on this play, he was also nowhere to be found, which is a bit suspect too. So I think a host of errors on that play.
A whole bunch of stuff went wrong. I had a couple thoughts about the other team in this game. Zlatan, you see all of his gifts, but you also see exactly how long he's been playing in European leagues and how many of the little tricks of the game he knows, whether it's going down at the right opportunities, just creating space in one way or another. He obviously had the assist in Alessandrini's goal, even if it was just a pass to open Alessandrini have to shoot from 30 yards. He was impressive, but the biggest thing that drew me is just how big he is. Like, he's just so much bigger than every player Minnesota threw at him that it caused problems. What did you see in Zlatan's game?
He's a large individual, that's true. One of the things a lot of people know about Zlatan is that he's a goal scorer and that he's, going to go down as one of the greatest strikers of all time. But he, I'm a fan of Manchester United, and he played for Manchester United last season, so it was fun to kind of really watch him over the course of a campaign. And that is one of the things that if you don't watch Ibrahimovic on a regular basis that you don't hear about, is how tactically aware he is, how smart his positioning is, and how good of a passer he is. And just as you pointed out, just a smart veteran about all types of situations. He's class all around. Unfortunately, I did feel like he was going to ground quite easily last night, which is unfortunate. But yeah, he can do pretty much everything on the field.
Was the play in the 95th minute a penalty?
That was so interesting. Oh my gosh, I could not believe that. Like that he would. I think so. Yeah, I think he dived. I think he did feel a little bit of contact from Miguel. So, arguably, the referee technically maybe could have called the pen. But
he's got 8 inches on Miguel.
Totally. If not more. And,
if not more.
And so I think Miguel makes contact with him, and I think he feels that, and he goes down. But I think it was not contact deserving of going to ground and earning a penalty. So I think,
but it was a call you see given in that player in that circumstance at home.
And I think he was. And my point being though is that he was looking for it. I think he wanted.
100%.
He was looking for it, and I'm so shocked that he gambled to take that to gamble to get the pen, because if he just stays on his feet, he's got a wide open shot at goal. And might even, I just flabbergasted that. I mean, he clearly gambled to get the pen and he lost. So,
Yep.
But I think it was the right call also to not give the pen.
Yep. Other thought about Galaxy's side, Michael Ciani is a fabulous defender. He is so good.
That team is very talented. I mean,
Yes, like
I thought Kitchen was really impressive as well. Kitchen's like the exact type of player like Minnesota United's in need of in terms of a defensive midfielder. But I thought he was good. The DeSantos brothers were obviously super talented, but relatively quiet, which is the reason the Galaxy aren't like the preeminent team in MLS, because those guys.
Jonathan, I don't know. The Minnesota's first goal is more than a little bit on Jonathan giving Darwin all the space in the world to hit a cross.
Yeah.
That was dumb.
Yeah. I think, but I don't know that you're getting 110% from either Dos Santos brother at this point. Like, I don't think they give that much of a rip about the MLS, and that's been a problem of Giovanni Dos Santos for a while. That's why he couldn't.
I was going to say Gio got yanked at halftime, and yet Lejet comes on for him and improves things.
Right, exactly. So I mean, kind of the problem that LA Galaxy is actually like the opposite problem of Minnesota United. They've got all the talent in the world, but they can't necessarily organize it, and they aren't necessarily giving 110% effort. So, yeah.
And last thought on the LA side of things, thoughts to Romain Alessandrini, who went off in the 22nd minute after scoring his goal. TV coverage showed the face, showed the tests they were doing. Jamie Watson covered the tests they were doing on him. Sounds a lot like it might be an ACL, and that sucks.
It looked like it, yeah. I that's funny, because that was one of my biggest takeaways just after the game, even though obviously I'm like analyzing all things Minnesota, was just still like bummed because Alessandrini is one of the best players in MLS, bar none. And
he's very good.
He's so good, and it's really unfortunate that he might
it's just one of those things that sucks. Doesn't matter what team you're playing for. ACLs are awful.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is. So best of thoughts to him. I haven't heard anything official from the team yet, but the way it was testing, the way things initially looked, any news that's not a torn ACL is good news at this point. So, and Minnesota knows about the torn ACL this year, so we've seen that. Other than that, yeah, I was really happy with Angelo's game. The opportunities where he just got to break away. He's got more speed than he lets on.
I agree.
The opportunity he had in the first half where he just bulldozed away from his defender and almost got a shot off, forced Bingham to come out and make a save on him. That was as fast as I've ever seen him move, and I think he's holding it back a little bit.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's kind of the important takeaway. There was a few of those moments where he got into full sprint in this game, and it's clear to me that he's faster than Christian. And that was one of the only – and so far he's shown that he can do pretty much anything that Christian could do. Of course, we have not seen him finish yet, but, I mean, he's got to be good at that, obviously. There's just no doubt he's not. And, yeah, so it's just like, all right, he could do pretty much everything Christian can do, even a little bit stronger in terms of his hold-up play, a little bit smarter in his movement, a little bit quicker with his passing, a little better with his distribution overall. But is he still going to be a slow number 9? And that doesn't appear to be the case. So, honestly, I hate to say it because I think, not to, I don't want to be out here just, piling on guys or having negative things to say, but the early look is that he's better than Christian Ramirez on every category.
Well, and that leads us to have the Christian Ramirez talk, because there was another game played in Los Angeles on Saturday night in which Christian Ramirez appeared in black and gold for the first time.
That's right.
So Ramirez was moved on Tuesday. If you remember last week, we talked about on the pod that it seemed possible, but the lack of any immediate teams having been discussed led me to believe that by the end of the day on Wednesday, he might still be a member of Minnesota United. Then you get to I was asleep on Tuesday night. That it went from Jeff Root of The Athletic tweeting that nothing was close at 6 o'clock to he is gone to LAFC 2 hours later. Like, it moved so quickly. I don't think LAFC were a team that was mentioned in any rumors with him. And just, it happened, and it was done. Minnesota received $800,000 in allocation money that can rise up to $1 million total, depending on Ramirez's output over the next 2 years.
Yep.
And so they received nothing now. The allocation money's good for, I think the 2018 allocation money has to be used by the end of the summer window next year, if I remember
Which
right.
is plenty of time.
Which is plenty of time. It's just like, as we've kind of talked about all year, the team might not necessarily have been looking to go all in on this season, which on the scope of the season probably is fair. So for them to get even more flexibility financially going forward seems good, but they've got to do the right thing with it. They've got to choose the right players with it. That's going to be the real thing. Is we can't make a conclusive call on what this trade means today or by the end of this season. It will largely depend on what Minnesota does with the allocation money they received moving forward, as well as what Christian Ramirez looks like in a new setting, closer to home, with a very, very good LAFC team, in which we'll see what his role turns into. He came off the bench on Saturday in a 2-0 loss to Kansas City, and I don't know, what were your thoughts when the Ramirez trade was announced, Nick?
I was a little surprised, but ultimately, you know, like we talked about on this podcast, and I laid it out, like there was a clear narrative as to why you do this move. And I think it made tons of sense to do it. And so when I, heard that they made it official, I was a little surprised just because, again, Christian's been a part of the franchise for so long and been such an integral part and done so many great things for this team. That part was, and he's got tons of friends on the team, and so from that part, it's a little surprising, but again, logistically, it makes tons of sense. And I think, as much as we talked about, Angelo's performance both last week and this week, obviously he's the direct replacement, but Abu Danladi nearly won Rookie of the Year of the entire league last year, and he was totally blocked from playing, given the current roster construction, and he needs to see the field, and he's as good as Christian can be at times.
Are you concerned about the casual fans' notice of Christian Ramirez, probably the team's most identifiable player, being traded away for nothing on face value?
No, not at all, because Darwin Quintero exists, and he's been stunning, and I think anyone who's following the team, even casually, is well aware of his exploits already. So I think this trade is a lot different if you don't have Darwin already.
Well, it's what it has the symptom of to some people that I've seen around is the Minnesotan player that grew up with this team, does good things but not enough, gets traded away to do even better things somewhere else.
That's
you can make whatever cross-sport reference you want. Every single one's got them.
David Ortiz,
Randy Moss, Kevin Garnett. You want to keep on going?
Well, Garnett's that one's a little weaker because he was a boss the whole time.
Yeah.
And he just won one title.
No, Ortiz is actually the perfect example. And really, even Moss is great in Minnesota.
Moss is, Moss is a decent one too, but David Ortiz is like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Never forget that one. But
so it's because Ramirez is still really young.
Oh, Brett Burns. That's the one.
You suspect that going to play with a highly talented team that's just going to spoon feed him opportunities to knock into the goal could make him look really, really good.
Potentially. And good for him. He's a good dude, right? Let's take, outside of like a Minnesota's perspective, good for him. As an individual, the dude trying to make it in pro soccer, I'd love to see him do well. That'd be awesome. Be a cool story.
Well, and he's from Southern California. He's just had a newborn child this year. He gets to go home, raise his child among family, among friends, whatever you have in a setting that's closer to home. He kind of was raised as an athlete in Minnesota, but home matters. And we've seen that plenty across a number of sports. And I think it's a cool opportunity for him to kind of get to stick in his, put his mark on LAFC in their first year in the league and moving forward to be that, not by MLS's terms, but a homegrown player for LAFC. And I'm excited to see what he has going forward and what he can grow into.
Yeah, and I wish I knew LAFC a little bit better. Like I just said, I hope he does well for his sake, but I don't know that I mean, he's going to be really up against it. I don't know if you've taken a look at LA's roster. I did after the trade. And this is the other strikers on the team that he just joined. Diamande, who just played in the Premier League last season, and when he joined LA, scored 7 goals in his first 7 starts.
Diamande has been phenomenal this year.
So you have a former Premier League striker on this team. Then you have Rossi, who is a 21-year-old DP. That's right. He's a DP at 20 years old, coming from Uruguay. And I'll add, after this trade in a midweek game, he scored a hat trick. Okay, so that's 2 strikers that he's trying to play over. Their third striker is Marco Arena, who is the starting striker for Costa Rica. Those are the 3 strikers he's competing against. I don't know that he's going to play at all. I mean, obviously he subbed in his first game, but that could be all PR because they were really pumping the trade on the PR on Twitter and etc. because he's a hometown guy. And again, I'm rooting for him, but boy, is that a stacked lineup to try to crack into.
Well, and it's one of those things where, like you said, you wish you knew the team better because, they can play 2 strikers at the same time, and probably will, given the wealth of resources they appear to have. I know in Saturday's game, Urania started and Ramirez came on as a sub. I forget who he came on for. He came on for Urania in the game, and they played some variant of 4-5-1, it looks like. But you wonder, because, it does seem like kind of an embarrassment of riches what that's going to look like for him and for the team, because, they're not going to not use these guys.
Right.
They sent out a lot of money to go acquire him, and they've got him under team control for a while. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see what this looks like going forward, because I think it could be a really good spot for him. It depends, as Nick said, on what the team shapes up to be around him more than almost anything else.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is I think the few times I've checked in on LA, they play with 1 striker. So, okay, even if they switch to 2, then you're definitely playing Diamande, and you would think you're DP then, Rossi. But, maybe, young strikers are still, they can usually play on the wing. Maybe you play Diamande and Ramirez through the middle, and then Rossi plays out wide. But that's if they play 2 strikers, which, again, I don't think they do. And then, is he better than Marco Arena? I don't know. You know what I mean? Again, Marco Arena just played at the World Cup. Ramirez isn't even getting sniffs with the national team anymore. So I don't know. I wonder. It would be super fascinating to know what Christian thinks of that, and having to play up against that. So
and as a man of the Twitter streets, we may be able to find out what he thinks of that.
Should we both tweet at him right now, and then see if he's responded by the next podcast?
I'm not tweeting at Christian Ramirez. He's got plenty to do.
I'm doing it right now.
You go ahead.
And the Prince.
Well, while Nick's tweeting, I will set him up with the next question. Nick Hallett, did you watch any of the Premier League's opening weekend this weekend?
I did. Heck yeah.
What did you watch? What did you enjoy?
I enjoyed Manchester United getting 3 points, although played relatively lackluster. I thought the Newcastle-Tottenham game was fantastic. Super interesting, back and forth, and tons of chances. I'm really excited to see Liverpool smash West Ham, because it just goes to show what a lot of people have been thinking preseason. that this title race is going to be Liverpool City, and it's going to be potentially a really good one. And I'm really enticed to see that.
Yeah, I watched Tottenham Newcastle and was interested in that. It's good to see Dele Alli on the score sheet. He did not have the greatest time towards the end of last year actually scoring goals. So it's good to see him involved in that aspect of play. That game was everything you don't want the 6:30 game to be. All 3 goals in that game were scored in the first 20 minutes of the game, and then you just have tension for 70 minutes. It's just like I'm so glad that I watched it on DVR, because boy, dealing with that second half on minimal sleep at 7 in the morning would not have been good for my heart. But I was also glad to see my team get 3 points. I was interested to see Manchester City comfortably beat Arsenal today. And I watched a little tiny bit of Ligue 1 this morning, the French league, to see Paris Saint-Germain open their season. And to see in that game an American striker score a goal.
Yeah, Mr. Weah.
Mr. Weah opening his account for Paris.
Tom was watching that game, and when he scored, he was like, "No way! I can't believe that."
So surprised.
You missed my pun. That was a great pun.
I thought it was a good pun. I thought I was being funny because obviously I did not watch that game.
I did actually watch that game. It was pretty fun. It has the problem that the French league has, where Paris is miles better than every other team in the league, but still fun to watch Neymar do things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yep. So that's your quick European notes. Minnesota have Dallas coming up on Saturday in Dallas. They have the suspensions of Calvo and Warner to deal with, which makes me suspect we're going to see a different formation of some kind. Like, the last time they did the 3-5-2 without Calvo, if I remember correctly, was against Houston on the road when Calvo was suspended for his yellow card accumulation. And they got waxed. I think Eric Miller played in the back line in the 3-5-2, and it just kind of didn't work. And with Warner and Calvo both out, they're going to have to play some other people somehow. You can bring out Wyatt Omsberg to play in the back line, which is something you can do, but you look, it's not great timing to have these kind of suspension problems happen, because you're playing the top team in the Western Conference on the road. You don't really need to give them more help.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the lineup's going to look like. I'm interested.
I'm fascinated too, because I think there's a potential for a formation switch.
Which, as Nick brought up, we've been on the 3-5-2 for a while. It's been pretty good for the most part, but now things are going to force Adrian Heath's hand into showing of the shifts that he made even within the game against the Galaxy. He might have to start with something new this time, and it's going to be fascinating to see what that looks like. So I'm extremely interested to see what this Dallas game looks like. I'm interested to see if they can get their more than another point on the road. This was their 4th point of the year on the road. And as I tweeted to Jeff Roeder of The Athletic last night, I'm really glad I can stop talking about March 10th now, because they've gotten a point on the road, finally. So we have an interesting week ahead. We have European leagues starting everywhere. Most of them started this week. La Liga starts next week. See what the Spanish league looks like. And lots of interesting storylines going on all across the world and right here in Minnesota. So with that said, it is time for us to move on and move out. So for Nick Hallett at Prince Hallett, who just tagged me in a tweet with Richard Ramirez.
Yes, this is going to be trouble.
Tom Schreier at TSchreier3, who was also tagged in that tweet. And myself, David Naylor at Prof Cedar. We will catch you guys next weekend. Peace.